Alright, so in our last video we installed Visual Studio Code and we made a simple web page that says Hello World. Here's the web page we made. So it says first web page followed by Hello World. And in this one what we're going to do is we're going to install our first extension for VS Code. This will help with efficiency as far as moving from the browser back to Visual Studio Code, and a little bit of styling to make the colors a little bit more easier to read and understand. And then we're going to do an inline style, and then we're going to take that inline style and put it in a cascading style sheet or a CSS file. So our first extension, if you come over here to the left ribbon where it says extensions, click on that and then type in live server, and it'll be the first one up here. It's a very popular extension for VS Code. And what this does is it allows us to save our HTML file, and then whenever we hit Control S or Command S, it'll automatically show in Chrome. So I'm not having to toggle back and forth and put focus into this window and then come over here and then put focus into this window. So I'll give you an example real quick. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go ahead and snap the browser over to the right here, kind of fill in the rest with VS Code. And what this is, again, allows us to do is once we open it up in Live Server, so you can either right click and open up in Live Server, you can go here and hit Go Live. And that opened up the exact same web page, but we're using a local server instead of the directory. And that allows me to do cool stuff like this. So I'm just going to hit exclamation points, and then because I have it opened in Live Server, I can just hit Control S. It'll automatically show in the window in the browser. So it's a very quick feedback loop to see what we're doing over here, which is going to help especially with our styling right now. So go ahead and get rid of that, hit Control S. Right. So we're mostly dealing with static web pages because we're going to be in Google Earth. And static web pages are pretty easy to design because it's just really boxes within boxes. So our first box is just the body. Right. So let's just style the body real quick. So if you go into the open tag of body and just type in style equals, and then quotation marks, and these are all of the CSS styles that we can use. So I'm going to go ahead and just use like background color and then aquamarine, and then hit Control S. So the first box we have, the body, is going to be aquamarine. Now for the web pages, all that's left is like, okay, I'm going to put a box here in the body and then maybe a box on the right side and position one left and one right. So I'll have an image over here or something like that and text over here. That's pretty much all you're doing whenever you're designing these very simple web pages. Right now I don't have a box, I just have text in the body. So I'm going to go ahead and put Hello World in a box. And the box block is a block, but the box element is a div. Block element is a div. I'm going to go ahead and close it, and you'll see that it created a close tag for me. VS Code did already. And I'm going to go ahead and just move in this Hello World in the middle of that box. So then right here. And the indentation is really important. So what the indentation does is tells me that there's going to be this div inside of the parent, which is this body. And I could put another div inside of here, so it would be a box inside a box inside a box. Right? And the reason why you do this is because you can style these boxes differently. So I'm going to style this div with a background color of burlywood, for example. And just go ahead and hit Control S, and you see that block element inside of that body. We can do other things inside this inline style, so we can give it a width, and then a colon, which more or less means equal in this case, 50%. And then I'm going to put a semicolon saying that I'm at the end of that instruction. Control S, and you'll see that it got smaller. And then you can do something like height, and then you can add a height of 35%. And you can do that in pixels also. So I can just do like 350 pixels, for example. And you hit Control S, and you'll see that I have a much larger box. And you can change the font size to be, I don't know, extra large. Control S, and you can change the color if you wanted to. You can do a lot of things with styling. All right, so view. Trying to find a word wrap here. Toggle world wrap. There we go. So then you can see. So there's my open and close, and then hello world right here. So that's pretty much inline styling. Let me just change this real quick. Margin for the body, I want it to be 0, and I want the padding to be 0. Control S, and that should bring my box in the very top left corner there. Cool. Right, so that's inline styling. And if you go look at the source code of a lot of web pages, you actually will not see inline styling. It's easier to control your boxes, especially if a lot of your styles are very similar, using Cascading Style Sheet, which is just another file type. So we'll go ahead and just move all of our inline styles to a CSS. To do that, just do a new file, which go back to your training over here. New file, and then just put first css.css so you can tell VS Code that this is going to be a CSS file. And we're still in the same folder, so I can use a relative link. So CSS goes your direction, how you point to it is you go to the head and you just type in link and then relation, and our relation here is going to be a style sheet. You can do type as well. I just normally do this href equals, so href is where you're pointing, and it's first CSS, and this is an empty tag. There's no need to have anything in the middle of it, so you just kind of close it off like that. So this points to the styling, to this CSS file, and because we have nothing in it, it's not really doing anything right now. But what we can do is we can move this body style and this div style into that CSS. So we'll start with the body. So just type in body and then swirlies, and you'll see the spacing's the same way, very similar to CSS as it is to HTML. And we're just going to kind of cut this out. So Control X, and then come over here and then Control V and go to our semicolon. So our body still is going to be a background color of aquamarine, and the margin and padding is margin is going to be 0, and the padding is going to be 0. That way I can read it a lot easier. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control S and save the CSS right now. And I'll go ahead and notice how it's still, the style stayed the exact same. Just get rid of everything else. Hit Control S again. So that body, aquamarine, and all the margin and padding is actually over here in the CSS and not in line. And it's a lot easier to make changes in one place, in the CSS, for example. We'll do the same thing with div. And the way that you reference this div is either by an ID or by a class. We're going to do a class text. So if I was to have another div, let's just say underneath it, and we'll do it real quick. Div class equals text. And then just say super cool, right? I'm going to go ahead and hit Control S, and you'll see that I have super cool right down here. And just for fun, I'm going to give this a little margin top of 10 pixels. I'll show you why in just a second. So it's shifting that down 10 pixels. All right, so this has a class of text. This has a class of text. I want the boxes to actually be the exact same. I want the bottom box div to be burly wood with 50% width, 350 pixel height, font size extra large, and margin 10 pixels, margin top 10 pixels. So instead of inline styling both of them, what I can do is I can just, because it's a class, I can take all of this, Control X, and then give it a class CSS, which is going to be a period text, because that's the name of the class. And I'm going to go ahead and just paste this here. And then after I paste it, I'll do my usual indentation. Cool. Right? And then if I hit Control Save, you'll see that I have both boxes now the exact same. So I'm changing it only at one place in the CSS instead of doing an inline style for hello world and inline style for super cool. The last thing I'm going to show you, and I know this video is getting a little bit long, but we're learning a lot of stuff. I hope you're enjoying it, and feel free to go faster, slow me down, or rewind, or whatever. Is I'm going to show us an easier way to kind of see how these elements, these block elements, make it easier to read. So if you do an extension, hit the extension tab again, and do rainbow tags. It's going to be this top one here, and go ahead and install it. And then extension global. Cool. So what this does is it changes the color of the tags so I know where they are in relation to each other. So if I was going to come over here, for example, and do another div, right? It turned it into this kind of, I don't know what that is, like pink color or something like that. And it's not going to change the page this time, just the way that I have it styled. It shouldn't change it. But as your pages get more complex, if everything's the same color and you're not using good indentation, it's kind of hard to see. And what that rainbow tag does is it forces those levels to kind of pop out. So that's the end of this video. Go ahead and experiment around if you want to see what all those CSS commands are. In the last video, I meant to show this earlier. If you just type in like HTML div, for example, anything that we do, this W3 schools will kind of help you with like the tags that you can use inside of a web page. But you also see that there's CSS, so you can see how all the CSS is that you can do to make some cool kind of fun web pages. And even in here, you can try it yourself and change things around and just kind of have a good time. All right, so in the next video, we'll actually start with our first Google Earth custom HTML info box.